Today, as we continue in our series on the greatest characters in the Bible, ladies, I'm going to show you exactly how you can win the keys to any man's heart coming up. Hey, my friend, welcome back to The Beat. My name is Parr. Thank you so much for tuning in. If this is your first time here, it's a pleasure. If you want a free ebook, click the link in the description box below. If you enjoy this video, consider subscribing, hit that little bell notification so you won't miss a beat. Okay, so if you are just joining us, we are in a new series on Fridays called Heroes, where every week we highlight a different character in the Bible and we extract different lessons that we can learn from their life. And last week we started out looking at my favorite character in the Bible, King David. And we're going to continue looking at his life today, but we're actually going to veer off a little bit and look at a woman that had a significant impact in David's life and ultimately became his wife. So we're going to look at some qualities that this woman named Abigail, her story is in 1 Samuel chapter 25, that she possessed that ultimately won David's heart, that I believe would also win the keys to any man's heart. So let's jump in. We're going to go through the entire chapter. This is an amazing story. You're in for a treat today. Okay, here it goes in 1 Samuel chapter 25, verse 2. Then David moved down to the wilderness of Maon. There was a wealthy man from Maon who owned property near the town of Carmel. He had 3,000 sheep and 1,000 goats, and it was sheep shearing time. Now let's just stop right there. What we're going to see here through this chapter is even though Abigail and her crazy husband Nabal had a lot of money, they were miserable, which lets us know that just simply having a lot of wealth and having a lot of possessions does not guarantee that you're going to have a happy marriage. I want you to notice here how the Bible sets up this contrast between how they describe Abigail, this beautiful, wonderful wife, and her husband. It says here, this man's name was Nabal, and his wife Abigail was a sensible and beautiful woman, but Nabal, a descendant of Caleb, was crude and mean in all his dealings. So, ladies, the first quality that I want to point out about Abigail that ultimately won the heart of King David is, and I know you're wondering, like, wait, isn't she married to some other guy? You got to keep tuning in. First and foremost, she was both beautiful and she also had intelligence as well. So my best advice to you would be not to focus on one or the other, but to understand that most men are attracted to a woman that has both of them. Oftentimes, women will focus all of their attention on their beauty, and then oftentimes men will get bored with that because they can't hold a conversation and can't keep a man's attention for a very long time. But then on the other extreme, some women will neglect their physical beauty and just focus primarily on brains and intellect and wisdom, not realizing that God has created us to be visual beings. So the first thing that we see about Abigail is that she had a great combination of both brains and beauty. Now let's keep going. In verse 4, it says, now David heard that Nabal was shearing his sheep. Now, let's stop right there. What does that mean? Well, in these days, oftentimes people would make a lot of money if they had a lot of sheep. They would obviously shear or cut the sheep and sell the wool as a result of the sheep. And so David basically figures out that this guy is shearing his sheep, and that means cha-ching, he's about to get paid, right? So notice it says here, David sends 10 of his young men to Carmel with this message for Nabal. Peace and prosperity to you, your family, and everything you own. I am told that it is sheep shearing time. Once again, cha-ching, I know you got money. I know you're getting paid. He says, while your shepherds stayed among us near Carmel, we never harmed them and nothing was ever stolen from them. Ask your own men and they will tell you this is true. So somewhere back in the past, we're not necessarily told exactly when, David protected these shepherds that belonged to Nabal from any hurt, harm, or danger that they could have possibly encountered. And as we're getting ready to see, now David is trying to cash in on the favor that he did for Nabal and his shepherds. It says right here, so would you be kind to us since we have come at a time of celebration? Please share any provisions you might have on hand with us and with your friend David. David's young men gave this message to Nabal in David's name, and they waited for a reply. So David is like, yo, man, I protected your shepherds. I made sure they were all taken care of. I didn't steal anything from you. I did my part. Now me and my boys are out in the wilderness kind of wandering around. We're in need of some provisions. We need some water. We need some food, some clothing. Can you hook a brother up? Can you return the favor? Notice what his response is in verse 10. This foolish dude, this selfish dude named Nabal, once again, Abigail's husband, says this: "Who is this fellow David?" Nabal sneered to the young men. "Who does this son of Jesse think he is? There are lots of servants these days who run away from their masters. Should I take my bread and my water and my meat that I've slaughtered for my shearers and give it to a band of outlaws who come from who knows where?" He was like, man, who is this David cow? I don't know him, right? Why should I take all my stuff, all the stuff that I got, and give it to some dude named David, man? He don't mean nothing to me. Well, let's just see. It says here in verse 12, so David's young men returned and told him what Nabal had said. So David's guys come back and tell David, yo, man, this guy ain't gonna give us jack, right? Notice David's response. It says, "Get your swords," was David's reply as he strapped on his own. Then 400 men started off with David and 200 remained behind to guard their equipment. So David is like, oh, he must not know about me. He must not know who he's getting involved with. We about to strap up and we about to go and take this fool out. So notice here in verse 14, meanwhile, one of Nabal's servants went to Abigail. Now, hold on with me. I'm getting to the characteristics of Abigail in just a second. I have to set up the story. Meanwhile, one of Nabal's servants went to Abigail and told her, David sent messengers from the wilderness to greet our master, but he screamed insults at them. These men have been very good to us, and we never suffered any harm from them. Nothing was stolen from us the whole time they were with us. In fact, day and night, they were like a wall of protection to us and the sheep. So they basically tell Nabal's wife how Nabal responded to David's message. And they say, you need to know this and figure out what to do, for there is going to be trouble for our master and his whole family. He is so ill-tempered that no one can even speak to him. So this guy is not only rude, he's not only selfish, he's obstinate, he doesn't take criticism, he's high on himself, he's wealthy, he's stingy, he's all of these things. And these shepherds of Nabal are quite familiar with David, and they're like, yeah, David's going to cause some trouble for us because of the way Nabal responded to David's boys. So I want you to notice here exactly how Abigail handled this and how and some characteristics that she had that ultimately won the heart of David. It says here, Abigail wasted no time. She quickly gathered 200 loaves of bread, 2 wineskins full of wine, 5 sheep that had been slaughtered, nearly a bushel of roasted grain, 100 clusters of raisins, and 200 fig cakes. Okay, here is the second quality about Abigail that ultimately won David's heart, and I believe it's the same quality that most men are looking for, ladies, and that is a woman who is able to perceive our needs. She knew that David was out there in the wilderness with his boys, and she perceived that they were hungry. She probably perceived that they hadn't eaten, they hadn't drank much in a while. They needed food and clothing and provisions. And before David even had to ask for it, she thought to herself, this is what these men probably need. So I'm going to go before him. I'm going to go ahead and provide what he needs. So ladies, men love a woman that ultimately wants to meet their needs, but thinks ahead and says, how can I take care of this man? How can I serve this man? How can I make sure that he's well taken care of? And so that's the second quality that we see about Abigail. But the story gets better because Abigail's character is about to go up a notch. Notice it says here in verse 20, as she was riding her donkey into a mountain ravine, she saw David and his men coming toward her. David had just been saying, a lot of good it did to help this dude. I'm actually paraphrasing. We protected his flocks in the wilderness and nothing he owned was lost or stolen, but he has repaid me evil for good. May God strike me and kill me if even one man of his household is still alive tomorrow morning. David is like, yo, I'm about to take this fool and his entire family out by tomorrow, right? Now, notice now Abigail is about to intercede on behalf of her foolish husband. It says here in verse 23, when Abigail saw David, she quickly got off her donkey and bowed low before him. She fell at his feet and said, look, I accept all blame in this matter, my lord. Please listen to what I have to say. Now, I want you to notice here that Abigail knows that her husband is a straight up fool. She says in verse 25, I know Nabal is a wicked and ill-tempered man. Please don't pay any attention to him. He is a fool, just as his name suggests. And so here is the third quality that I see about Abigail, and that is this. She is faithful and she protects her husband even when he is not treating her right. Listen, David sees this and he's like, man, if this is how she does a fool, if this is how she protects her husband who does not treat her right, then I can only imagine how faithful she will be to me. And so notice here that it probably would have been good for her if David would take her husband out. But instead of thinking that way, because she knew her husband was a fool, she said, you know what? This is my husband. Even though he doesn't treat me right, even though he's not doing right by me, I still am responsible for protecting him and for standing up for him. So ladies, a man wants a woman who's got his back, even when he's acting foolish, even if he's not acting right. He needs to know that above and beyond everything, that he can depend on his wife to take care of him, to be faithful to him, to not step out on him, and to protect him and his reputation. So let's keep going and let's see what else we can see about Abigail's character. She says here in verse 26, now my Lord, as surely as the Lord lives and you yourself live, since the Lord has kept you from murdering and taking vengeance into your own hands, let all your enemies and those who try to harm you be as cursed as my husband Nabal is. And here is this present. So she brings him a present. And then she says this, the Lord will surely reward you with a lasting dynasty, for you are fighting the Lord's battles and you have not done wrong throughout your entire life. So the fourth thing that we see about Abigail is that she helps David process his own pain. David is in pain. David is disappointed. David is frustrated. He feels let down. And instead of responding in anger, she helps calm him down. She helps settle him down. She helps him process his anger and his frustration and his pain. Ladies, if you want to get the key to a man's heart, you need to be able to help him find those soft spots. You need to be a soft spot for him to land. You need to be able to help him process the anger and the pain from his childhood or past relationships or whatnot. He needs to know that he can be open and transparent and vulnerable with you. But I want you to notice something else that she did. I believe this is number 5, and that is this. She reminded David of his destiny and his purpose and the call that God had on his life. I want you to notice here, it says here in verse 29, even when you are chased by those who seek to kill you, that's King Saul. We talked about that last week. Your life is safe in the care of the Lord your God, secure in his treasure pouch. But the lives of your enemies will disappear like stones shot from a sling. When the Lord has done all he promised and made you, David, the leader of Israel, don't let this be a blemish on your record. Then your conscience won't have to bear the staggering burden of needless bloodshed and vengeance. And when the Lord has done these great things for you, please remember your servant. Now, let me break down what she just said. She said, David, you don't realize this, but you're about to be the next king of Israel. And if that is the case, you do not need any senseless bloodshed on your hands. Matter of fact, if you do this, it could jeopardize you even being the next king of Israel anyway. So she says, I want to caution you. I want to intercede. I want to meet you at your place of weakness. And I want to strongly encourage you to think this thing over before you do something that you for sure are going to regret. Something that when you become king, not if you become king, but when you become king, when you step into your calling, when you step into your destiny, when you step into your purpose, when you step into being the king, I don't want you to have this on your conscience. So notice David's reply in verse 32. David replied to Abigail, praise the Lord, the God of Israel, who sent you to meet me today. Thank God for your good sense. Bless you for keeping me from murder and from carrying out vengeance with my own hands. Verse 34, for I swear by the Lord, the God of Israel, who kept me from hurting you, that if you had not hurried out to meet me, not one of Nabal's men would still be alive tomorrow morning. Now you can read the rest of the story later, but basically what happens in verses 36 through 38, Abigail goes home and her husband is throwing this big old party. He's drunk, but then the very next day, Abigail tells her husband, this foolish cat, and says, hey, this is what was getting ready to happen to you, but I interceded for you and saved your foolish behind. And as a result, he has a stroke and dies. Well, the word gets back to David that this dude dies, Abigail's husband dies, and David basically sends a message to her and says, yo, I'm sorry to hear about what happened to your husband, but holla at your boy. So to make a long story short, Abigail says, yeah, I would love to marry you, David, but I want you to notice how she responds. And this is the last quality and characteristic about Abigail that makes her a woman that no man can resist. It says here in verse 40, when the messengers arrived at Carmel, they told Abigail, David has sent us to take you back to marry him. She bowed low to the ground and responded, I, your servant, would be happy to marry David. I would even be willing to become a slave, washing the feet of his servants. And then later on in that verse, it says, and so she became his wife. So notice that she had a servant's heart. She was willing to serve him. Listen, ladies, I know it may make you feel like a doormat. It may make you feel like, man, what about serving me? Yeah, I get it, right? You want to look for a man that wants to serve you too. But one of the things that most men that I know are looking for is a woman that has a sweet spirit, a servant's heart, someone that's looking out for him and wanting to take care of his needs. So here are 6 qualities that I believe that Abigail had that won the heart of David. And these are the same things that I believe will be the keys to any man's heart. So I hope that you'll continue on with us in this series, Heroes, where every single week we highlight a new biblical character and learn life lessons from them. If you found this video helpful in any way, feel free to share it with a friend. Also, if you haven't done so already, I would love it if you would subscribe. Check out some of the other videos on this channel. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time on The Beat.